So good evening, everybody. I think we'll make a start because I'm sure you've all got lots of exciting things to want to be heading off to when you've finished this. Thank you all for joining us this evening for this webinar to welcome internationally educated nurses to a discussion with some of us here from the Royal College of Nursing. I'm Ellen McNicholas and I'm one of the regional directors at the RCN, and the area that I cover is the southeast of England. And I'm joined this evening by a number of colleagues who are going to go through in detail some sessions with you, including information on the NMC register, the testing, English language, lots of other useful information, as well as the benefits of membership. My colleagues will introduce themselves when they start to speak. They will tell you who they are and what their role is. You really are all very, very, very welcome here tonight. And this is an event for people who work in every sector, whether it's the NHS or the private sector or the independent sector, or who are just thinking about taking up employment. And whatever stage you are at in your career, you are welcome. It includes our nursing support worker colleagues, and it is open to both Royal College of Nursing members and non-members. And we would hope that following this, those of you who are non-members would see the benefit of our organisation and may want to consider joining, and we will make sure you have information on how to do that too. I've asked my colleagues are going to keep their cameras off until they're presenting, and then at that point they will put them on. There will be lots of opportunities to ask questions, and one of my colleagues, Helen, is here to support us with the questions tonight. So please do feel free to pop questions in the chat and we will come to them at the end of individual sessions, but there is a section at the end of the evening that is solely for questions and answers, and that can be in relation to the presentations or on other topics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jill. Jill, thank you, and would you like to tell everybody who you are, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jill Coverdale and I'm the UK Head of Education at the Royal College of Nursing, and welcome to you all. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we'll be covering today, and then I'll come in a little bit later and cover some of the topics that I'll be describing. And I'm delighted that we're joined by colleagues from across the Royal College of Nursing, as you'll find out. So yes, we'll be talking about what is the Nursing and Midwifery Council, what are the registration requirements here in the UK, which also includes the English language requirements, the health and character evidence, the processes and steps towards registering here in the UK. We'll also be talking about readmission to the register and adding qualifications once you're on the register. And for those of you joining us who might be a nursing associate, we'll be talking about transitioning from being a nursing associate to a registered nurse. We'll also be talking a little bit about the independent health and social care sector, what a trade union is and what we've accomplished as a trade union, and the differences between working in the 4 countries across the UK as well. And finally, ending with 5 reasons why you might want to join the RCN if you're not already a member. And then, as Ellen has said, an opportunity to answer any of your questions that you'll pop in the chat box. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Nikki Clarkson, who's going to be talking to you about what the Nursing and Midwifery Council is. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. And yes, my name is welcome. My name is Nikki Clarkson, and I'm the professional lead for learning and development in the Southwest region. So very good evening to you. So what I'm going to be talking about, what is the Nursing and Midwifery Council? The NMC is an independent regulator of more than 770,000 nursing and midwifery professionals in the UK, whose vision is to uphold safe, effective and kind nursing. The NMC have an important role to play in making this a reality. Their role is to regulate by promoting high education and professional standards for nurses and midwives across the UK and nursing associates in England, maintaining the register of professionals eligible to practice, and investigating concerns about nurses, midwives and nursing associates, something that affects a tiny minority of professionals each year. To regulate, the NMC ensure they support the professions by creating resources and guidance that are useful throughout people's careers, helping them to deliver our standards in practice and addressing those new challenges. Regulating and supporting our profession allows the NMC to influence health and social care. And the NMC work closely with the RCN and discuss issues around workforce planning, safe staffing, and a multitude of issues that affect nursing within health and social care sectors. By working with the NMC, the RCN use our voice to speak up for our members and to continue to strive for a healthy and inclusive working environment for our profession. There are various steps to join the NMC register as a nurse, midwife or nursing associate. And the NMC has a step-by-step guide for those trained outside of the United Kingdom. The first part of the process is to check the eligibility of whether you can be placed on the register. And once your eligibility is confirmed, the NMC may ask you to complete a test of competence as well as completing your registration application. The test of competence assesses the skills and knowledge of people applying to join the register from overseas or rejoining the register after a long period away from practice. Regulations passed by the UK government following the UK's departure from the European Union allow for certain EU general nursing and midwifery qualifications to be recognised. So if you have a relevant European qualification that meets the requirements for automatic recognition, you won't need to take the test of competence. This applies even if you're not an EU national, but you have a relevant European qualification. If you do not hold a relevant European qualification, you will need to take a test of competence as they will not recognise your qualification. Applicants must also provide identity evidence like details and a copy of their passport, proof of qualifications, a copy of qualification certificates and information on the education institution. The applicant's institution must review the information about your qualification, confirm if it matches their records, and confirm if it will allow you to register with the relevant professional regulator. If you have previously registered in your country of training, the NMC will ask you for the name of the regulator and a copy of your registration certificate. The NMC will contact your regulator, confirming your details and checking those eligibility criteria. If you haven't registered in your country of training, the NMC will ask of a regulator that you could have registered with and contact them to check your eligibility. If any of your documents are not in English, you must provide the original document. A photocopy of the original document stamped and signed by a translation service, and the complete and accurate English translation with the copy of the original document stamped and signed, as we say, by the translation service. The translation service must also provide their contact details. Along with these documents, you will need to confirm a professional indemnity agreement. You'll be asked for the scope of practice and setting that you plan to work in once you become registered. It is a legal requirement for everyone on the register to have an appropriate indemnity arrangement in place for when they practice in their professional capacity. In your application, the NMC will ask you to declare that you have or will have appropriate indemnity cover in place for whenever you practice. You don't personally need to hold your indemnity cover, but it's your responsibility to ensure that appropriate cover is in place. So it's worth checking with your employer or insurance provider to confirm this. You'll also be subject to English language requirements and health and character evidence, as well as being asked to supply a transcript as well. If I could ask for the next slide, please, and transfer over to Charlie.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you all this evening. My name is Charlie, and I'm the UK Policy Manager at the IEN. I just wanted to run through a few of the requirements that there'll be for demonstration to be able to access the NMC register. The first one of these is English language requirements, and there are basically sort of three different options depending on your current situation. There are three different options to be able to demonstrate English language ability. So the first one of these is if you have a qualification that has been taught and examined in English, that would be sort of option one. The second one is if you can demonstrate that you have recently been practicing for the last year in a majority English speaking country. And the third option is that you can do a English language test. There's a couple of different options for these tests. So you can book a language test to be able to demonstrate that. And any one of those three options will be able to help you demonstrate kind of English language abilities. On the NMC website, there is a guide that would help you through the English language testing option, if that was the option that sort of suits you best, and be able to provide guidance about where the testing centres are and how you might prepare for that exam. If you are using the option where you have recently had employment in a majority English speaking country, you would need your employer to be able to complete a form to be able to say that you are in a majority English speaking country and that you have been interacting with patients and colleagues in English. So there may be some other evidence that you would need to provide alongside that. For example, if you have a qualification that has been taught in English, then your transcript will need to sort of demonstrate that was undertaken in English, including the sort of patient-facing elements of your training course. So there's a couple of other pieces of evidence that you would need alongside English language. The sort of second section is health and character evidence. So on the health evidence, first of all, essentially what is required here is that you're able to prove that you don't have any sort of health conditions that are going to limit your ability to keep patients safe. So this isn't a sort of discriminatory policy. It's not saying, you know, if you have a disability that you won't be able to come on the register, but it's just basically trying to get an assessment of if there are any elements that would make it unsafe for patients. So the way that you would do that is to complete a self-declaration, so setting out any health conditions that you might have or disabilities that you might have and how these are managed, and then have somebody who can support that declaration. And the key thing about this is that it needs to be sort of relevant and recent, so within the last 6 months, to be able to demonstrate that it is an accurate representation of your you know, current health conditions. And then the key thing here is that, you know, once you have joined the register, your employer will be able to support you with finding reasonable adjustments for any disabilities or health conditions once you're sort of working in practice. So the next piece of evidence alongside health is character. So this is looking at anything from your sort of past that may be limiting your ability to take care of patients safely. So the key things here are any sort of police records, criminal charges, cautions, anything that you might have had on previous registration where you were sort of struck off or have any sort of relevant disciplinary hearings, or if you've been practicing without registration when you should have been registered. So the key things here are to make sure that you're sort of aware of you know, what your background is, anything relevant, and that you have sort of openly declared that to the NMC, that so they can make, you know, relevant decisions about any sort of safeguards, but also whether it's appropriate to sort of allow you to continue with your registration. There's a couple of different routes and options, and again, this will all be on the sort of step-by-step guide, but depending on whether you have previously been registered within the sort of last 3 years, if you've registered before but not within the last 3 years, or if you've never held any registration. So yeah, depending on which route, there'll be slightly different restrictions in place, and because the NMC will have some information about previous history if you have previously been on the register. So this is about your sort of transcript of your academic record, and these rules have actually been relaxed fairly recently. So if you have an English if you have qualified and trained in English, then it's possible for the NMC to be able to make an assessment of whether your qualification would have led to you being registered in sort of your country, your home country. Otherwise, for some people, and again, this step-by-step guide will help you determine sort of which path you're on. For some people, they are required to provide a transcript. In this case, the key thing is to be able to demonstrate that at least 50% of the programme is a sort of clinical interaction, and then of this 75% was with sort of patients and service users and taken place in English. The other thing here is, as Nicola mentioned, is making sure that that's either sort of an original or a sort of stamped and certified copy in English where possible, but with a translation if not. Thank you. I think that's all that the slides that I have, but nice to see you all. Thank you.
So when you're ready to submit your application, you'll need to pay the £153 registration fee. You won't be able to submit your application until you pay the registration fee. The fee will be refunded if you withdraw your application before the NMC can complete your registration, or the NMC close your application because you didn't return the required supporting evidence within the timescales given, or your application is unsuccessful because the NMC determine that you don't meet the registration requirements. You should review your application to make sure all the details are correct to avoid any of those delays. It's important to take the time to prepare. There are numerous factors to take into account, including preparing the evidence you need to show that you meet the registration requirements and how much preparation time you feel you need before you take your CBT and OSCEs. The NMC aim to assess your qualifications within 14 days. And once the NMC have confirmed your eligibility to apply for registration, you'll have 2 years to complete your registration, and this includes taking any tests. The NMC aim to consider your complete registration application within 30 days once they've received your supporting health, character and language evidence, and where applicable, your CBT and OSCE results and your registration fee. The important tip really is to contact your referees before you begin. When you're ready to submit your application, make sure that you let your referees know that the NMC will be contacting them to provide your support declarations so they can respond as quickly as possible. Once you've submitted your application and paid your registration fee, the NMC will contact your nominated referees to verify those qualifications. The NMC can only evaluate your information once they've received all your supporting information and verification from your referees. The NMC may need to ask you for more information if any of the details you provide are unclear or appear incomplete, or if you or your referees provide conflicting information. On receiving all your supporting information, they'll aim, as we say, to assess your application within 30 days and will then contact you by email to let you know the decision and your next steps. The NMC are required to make a decision on your application within 3 months of receiving that completed application. And if they fail to do this, you have that right of appeal. Could I have the next slide, please, and hand over to Matthew?
Thank you, Nicola. My name is Matthew McKenna. I am a legal officer in the regulatory and employment teams, and I'm just going to speak about remaining on the NMC register. So the first step to that is revalidation. Revalidation is the process that all nurses and midwives in the UK and nursing associates in England need to follow and maintain to follow to maintain their registration with the NMC. To help you continually develop and reflect on your practice, the NMC asks you to revalidate every 3 years. The reason behind this is that it encourages you to reflect on the role of the code in your practice and demonstrate that you are, quote unquote, living the standards set out within it. And the NMC, in order to help you do this as efficiently and stress-free as possible, have a lot of resources to help you get the best from your revalidation, and support is also available within the RCN. So revalidation has 7 requirements. The first is practice hours. You're expected to evidence that you have practiced for a minimum number of hours over a 3-year period, and that number is 450 hours. That is 450 hours of nursing practice. It's not necessarily something that's indirectly related to nursing. It must be nursing practice. And the second step is CPD, continual professional development. You're also expected to have undertaken 35 hours of CPD relevant to your practice, 20 of which are participatory. You need to evidence this by keeping records of the CPD, as well as a description of the topic and how it relates to your practice, when the CPD took place, how long it took, and what part of the code it relates to. So the third is practice-related feedback, and that is that you will need to have obtained 5 pieces of practice-related feedback. The fourth is reflective accounts and reflective discussion. And that's again going back to the notion that you must reflect on your practice. So you'll need to have 5 reflective accounts in 3 years. This could be around your CPD or practice-related feedback, or maybe an experience. Or all of the reflections must be relevant to the code. You will also need to organise a reflective discussion with another registrant and discuss your 5 reflective pieces. So the next is health and charter declaration. You'll need to provide a health and character declaration which will confirm you have not been convicted of a criminal offence, or highlight if there have been any fitness to practice issues, either with your health or with your ability to practice. And I should point out at this stage that ongoing fitness to practice issues are not always prohibitive to you successfully revalidating. The next is professional indemnity arrangements, and you need to declare that you have an indemnity arrangement if someone has suffered any serious harm through your actions as a nurse, that they will be able to claim compensation in respect of. And finally, confirmation. It's important you meet with the person who can confirm that you have met all the revalidation requirements. They are called the confirmer and are usually your current line manager. They don't have to be a registered nurse, but can also be another healthcare professional. The confirmer will then record this using a confirmation form, which is submitted to the NMC. So how do I get readmitted onto the NMC register? So practice hours, you must have undertaken a registered practice for either 450 hours in the 3 years before you start your readmission application, or in some instances 750 hours in the 5 years before you start your readmission application, or you're applying for readmission having qualified in the last 5 years and are unable to meet the 450 registered practice hours in the last 3 years. The NMC can only consider the hours you worked when you were effective on the register. If you have worked without registration in a role that requires NMC registration, they'll also ask for details about this. And if you can't meet the requirement, if you haven't practiced for the required hours, you'll need to complete a return to practice course or a test of competence. Continuing professional development. You must have gained 35 hours of learning in the 3 years before you apply for readmission. These hours don't need to be from a time that you were effective on the register. And in respect of professional indemnity arrangement, all nurses, midwives and nursing associates must hold appropriate cover under a professional indemnity arrangement. And the NMC will also assess your application to determine whether or not you meet the English language requirements. In terms of health and character declarations in your application, you'll need to declare any health condition and/or disability which may affect your ability to practice safely and effectively. Any police charges, cautions, convictions, or conditional discharges other than those which are protected. Any fitness to practice determinations you have received from any other regulatory body. And a supporting declaration and references, you will need 3 different references from 3 different people. In terms of the first referee, the NMC registrant must provide supporting declaration of your health and character. And this referee should be from the same part of the register you're applying to join. For example, if you're trying to readmit as a nurse, your referee must also be a registered nurse. The referee must have known you for at least 1 year in the last 3 years and have been in contact with you in the last 6 months. The second one is much more simple. It must simply be your current employer. And the third referee is someone of approved signatories that you have known for the last year. In terms of overseas practice, if you're declaring overseas practice, the NMC will ask you for a certificate of professional standing from the country you're declaring practice from, and you'll need to contact the regulator that you're registered with to provide this, and they should be able to provide it without any hesitation. If you're applying for readmission within 6 months of your revalidation due date, so if your registration has lapsed within 6 months of your most recent revalidation date, you'll also need to complete some of the revalidation requirements that we have spoke about before. So you'll need to provide a surname and PIN of an NMC registrant to provide a supporting declaration of your health and character. They must have known you for at least 1 year in the last 3 years and been in contact in the last 6 months. Provide the name and email address of your employer. Provide the name and email address of someone on the NMC's approved signatories that you have known for the last year. Declare 20 hours of your 35 hours of CPD that are participatory. Declare that you have obtained 5 pieces of practice-related feedback. Declare that you have 5 written reflective accounts, and confirm that you have had a reflective discussion with an NMC registrant and provide their name and PIN. So your referees must be 3 different people, and you can obtain more information on revalidation on the NMC website. Could I have the next slide, please, and I will hand over to Jill.
So once you are on the register, you can apply to add another qualification to your existing registration. And to add a qualification, you have to have an NMC online account, but you have to have an NMC online account to revalidate and go on the register anyway. You'll need to provide the qualification and the registration detail. So, for example, if you are already registered as an adult nurse, you could also add a children's nursing qualification, or a mental health nursing qualification, or a learning disability nursing qualification, because they are separate fields on the NMC register. However, you can't add a clinical specialism. For example, something like cancer nursing or critical care nursing. You will also have to complete the test of competence to show you've got the relevant knowledge and skills in that particular area you're wishing to add. And each test of competence is split into 2 parts. A multiple choice computer-based test known as the CBT, and a practical test known as the OSCE, and that's the Observed Structured Clinical Examination Test. You'll need to take a test that's specific to that part of the register that you're applying to join or rejoin, and as I said before, they are adult nurse, mental health nurse, learning disability nurses, or children's nurses. It could also be a midwife and a nursing associate. How long is it valid for? Well, you must pass the CBT and the OSCE within 2 years of each other. You can sit your CBT or your OSCE in any order, but you need to complete both parts to continue with your application for initial registration or readmission. And once you've successfully passed both the CBT and the OSCE, your test of competence will remain valid for 5 years. There is a cost to this process though, and it can be around about £1,000 or just over £1,000. So this is to look at transitioning from a nursing associate to a registered nurse. And within the United Kingdom, nursing associates is a relatively new role within the team. Nursing associates in England only in this country, and they are they work with healthcare assistants or nursing support workers and registered nurses to deliver care for patients. And for some nursing associates, it's a stepping stone to becoming a registered nurse. There's also midwifery associates, and they work with registered midwives. You can put your nursing associate training towards a shortened nursing degree or a registered degree apprenticeship programme, and it's normally about 2 years and consists of both clinical placements and some additional theory at university, and therefore assignments and stroke exams. The nursing associate role is at an academic level 5, whereas the study towards a nursing degree is at least level 6, which is degree level, or postgraduate diploma or master's level. By taking into consideration all the learning you've completed as a nursing associate, though, it shortens the time you need to study to become a registered nurse. So that's why many nursing associates use it as a stepping stone to a registered nursing qualification. So to be eligible, you must have a UK visa. You must have completed a foundation degree in nursing associate and evidence of that. And you must have maths and English qualification. You may apply to the NMC to register as a nursing associate if you trained outside England, and the NMC website sets out the requirements and gives an overview of the application process, so you know what you want, you know what to expect along the way, and we'll put the link in the chat. Okay, on to the next slide, please, Jitan, and I'm going to hand over to Gary Kerwin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just really going to take you through a couple of slides from a trade union perspective, which is the IEN is a trade union as well as a professional body, but also to talk about, well, what is independent health and social care? As you can see from the headings, there's anything that's not the NHS is covered in that title. We would also add others that aren't independent health, i.e. higher education is also where a lot of our members work as lecturers, researchers. Is another of a civil service. Our members work in the civil service, but this is where these list here is independent health and social care, and they could be anything as one or two care homes in a town that are owned by a family, right through to a national chain where you've got 300 or 400 care homes in a chain operating across the whole of the UK. So they do vary in size, as do the acute hospital chains, Spire probably being the biggest of them, but Circle, Nuffield and being very big as well. They are very broad, they're very big, they cover they cover at least 3 countries. And you will see, and we'll talk about that later, there are differences across the 4 countries to how much independent health and social care there actually is. General practice nurses, many general practice nurses probably think they are in the NHS. Well, They're not. They work for contractors to the NHS, which are GPs. So technically they're outside of the NHS and they don't have the same pay terms and conditions as those in the NHS. And I could say that for all these groups, if you go from a social care provider like Four Seasons through to Nuffield, the pay terms, conditions and pension offer will be very different and will vary quite a lot, right the way through to public health, local authorities, health protection arrangements that we've got in this country, and criminal justice, that's through probation service as well as prison nursing. So as I said, there are differences. You will find in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there are not such a significant number of independent health care providers. In England alone, there's probably around 30,000 different independent health and social care providers. That's anything from big national chains right the way through to the 1 or 2 care homes owned by a family in a town or a region. So significant, they're big, quite a significant range of employers for our members to choose to work in. Moving on to, as I said, the RCN is a trade union. Now, some of you, I would hope, may have come across trade unions in the countries that you've come from to come here, but I'm not going to read it all out. This is what trade unions are. This is what they do. The RCN is a trade union, and 7 million people in the UK belong to trade unions at the moment. So that's a significant number of people, of working people, and it covers everyone from nurses through to shop workers, apprentices, footballers, doctors, etc. There's a broad range of people in trade unions. Trade unions have been around for nearly 200 years now. They're still relevant and still got a role to play at the workplace and in society. So this is what trade unions do. Well, the question's always asked often when we're recruiting, why join a trade union? Well, I'm not going to claim the RCN did all of these, but we are involved and have been involved in some of them. Without trade unions, there wouldn't be any of this in the UK. There would be a really different type of working environment, because these maternity pay, paid holidays were not a gift from an employer or from the government. They were a result of trade unions arguing and negotiating over them. Health and safety legislation, again, not a gift, was down to negotiations, representations by trade unions. So there are significant gains that have been accomplished in the UK, but more to come. We will be talking about the 4-day week. That's on many unions' agendas to negotiate for that. We'll be talking about, as it should be, you've got the right to have flexible working from day one in the NHS, but it's very underused and very underutilised because people aren't giving it, people aren't asking for it. But that's another right that was, again, negotiated by trade unions. So if you've got concerns at the workplace, it's where trade unions are present and to support you, develop you and help you at that workplace. But statistically, where trade unions are, pay is better and the health and safety at the workplace is a lot better when you've got an organised trade union at your workplace. So the RCN is a trade union and a professional body, and it works hand in glove to ensure that the members' well-being ensures the best patient outcome. At the moment, we've got some challenges. You may have been seeing stories in the news about what legislation may be coming the way of trade unions. But look what the RCN's been involved in 2022-23, an NHS pay dispute in England, an NHS pay dispute in Scotland, Wales, NHS pay dispute in Care Quality Commission, pay dispute in the Isle of Man, pay dispute in Jersey. So we are as a trade union standing up for members and getting members to stand up for themselves with us to try and improve pay terms and conditions at the workplace. So trade unions have accomplished all this, but there's more to come and more to win. So if you haven't joined, I hope that's whet your appetite to say why you should be joining a trade union and why it should be the RCN. As I said, there are differences. We've put some links into there. I would say, as I said, England is probably in terms of employment opportunities, probably a lot more diverse opportunities, given we've got up to 30,000 different employers outside the NHS operating in England. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there are less independent sector providers. Northern Ireland has got quite a number of social care providers who are independent sector, but the other countries would have organisations like Marie Curie, Macmillan, the hospice change, and some of the larger acute and mental health hospital chains will be in those countries, but not to the same density and the same spread as there is in England. So that's why England's quite different. London is a world of its own, microcosm, I think, of the whole of England. So if you're interested, these slides will be available, but I'll click on the link if you're thinking about looking to work elsewhere. Those links will give you kind of good background to what else is on offer and what else is going on in those countries. I hope that's proved useful, and I'm going to hand over to Elaine.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, colleagues, for all of that information. And I'm just going to round up the session with a little bit more about the Royal College of Nursing before we move on to some time for questions and answers for all of you. And I think you will have heard from colleagues as they've talked about the various things that the Royal College of Nursing can help and support with. And just one of the things that I do want to acknowledge is that in some countries in the world, it is illegal to be a member of a trade union. And I just want to be absolutely clear that is not the case in the UK. Everybody is entitled to be a member of a trade union organisation should they choose to do so. And the benefits that you get from being a member of the Royal College of Nursing are wider than just being a member of a trade union, because we have that dual role that Gary mentioned. We are a professional Royal College as well as a special trade union. And many of the senior staff in the Royal College of Nursing, including a number of colleagues on this call here tonight and myself, we are nurses and we maintain our registration, and we are proud to do so. And that enables us to be able to offer a breadth of help and support to you that may not be available elsewhere. And as such, we are the world's largest nurse-only trade union, if that's not too clumsy a way of describing what we do. So the first thing that I want to reiterate to you, you've heard a lot tonight about the NMC and registration in the first instance, but also the revalidation requirements, and continuous professional development is a big part of that. And by being a member of the Royal College of Nursing, you will have access to all sorts of opportunities for lifelong learning through the RCN's resources, and those are included within your membership, and there are a number of them online that you can access online, as well as joining things in person. Sometimes, unfortunately, things do go wrong in the workplace, and sometimes that's through no fault of any individual, but it's really important that you get the right help and support when that happens. It can be really scary, and sometimes, you know, I've been involved in cases myself, and you can get very emotionally involved in it, and it's very hard then to actually pull out what the practical things that you need to do are. Being a member of the Royal College of Nursing will provide you that workplace support, and as I've already said, we are a specialised union in relation to the nursing workforce. And when I say the nursing workforce, that includes our nursing support worker members and colleagues too. You've already heard from Matthew, and Matthew, as he introduced himself, explained that he is a member of our legal team, and we have our own in-house legal team here that will provide our members, when they need it, with legal advice. And that can be really critical when things are serious in organisations that you're working in, and again, often it is through no fault of your own, but you will have access to that help and support For some things, it will be through our very experienced officers and senior regional officers. For other things, it will be our solicitors and legal team themselves. Member support is huge. There's a whole list of things here that we can help and support with. Top of that list here is immigration support and welfare guidance. And that welfare guidance can be around financial support. And we know that there are financial challenges for everybody. The cost of living crisis has had a massive impact. But we also know if you are moving from one country to another, there are additional expenses, and sometimes there are some challenges financially, and we can offer advice and support with that too. Career coaching is also really important because we want people to be successful. The NHS and the independent sector in this country is desperately short of nurses, healthcare support workers, and all other professions. And those of you who have chosen to come and work in the United Kingdom are a huge support to us, and we really value having you here and want to help you to make that valuable contribution. We can help with career advice, career coaching, writing CVs, applications. We can help with interview support and career planning of all sorts. So there are information available on the website about that, but equally, if you reach out to us, we can help you. We have telephone counselling when that's needed for members. We have peer support offers for members who have disabilities. And there's also one that's a handy guide that's published for common English expressions. And I'm smiling when I say that because some of you might have noticed from my accent that I'm not English, I'm Scottish, and I work in England, and sometimes I forget and I use Scottish expressions and my colleagues raise their eyebrows and look at me. So it can be useful to get to the bottom of what some of these phrases are, and just makes it generally easier. The careers advice is also there, and we've provided the link for you. I hope that you can see there are some really good reasons why you could consider joining this professional Royal College and special trade union, and that we want to support you to be successful in your careers in the United Kingdom. We've now got time for questions, and I really would encourage you to ask questions, and especially those of you who perhaps have already made your way onto the register in this country and who are employed. You may have questions that haven't been covered by some of these sessions, so please do ask them. You can either pop them in the chat, or if you want to, please raise your hand and we can put your camera on and you can talk to us directly. If you want to put a question in the chat and we're not able to provide all of the details just now, please be assured that we will go through the chat in detail and we will contact you with further responses and advice if there is anything else that you required. So I'm going to go to my lovely colleague Helen, and just ask, have we got any questions that need to be directed? Thank you.
So the first one, I think either to Matthew or Jill probably. Can I do the CBT test and OSCE test first before I apply for the police clearance and DBE certificate, as the document's only valid for 12 months, but the test valid for 2 years? So that's a timing and an order question. And Ivy has had her second question speedily answered by Jill. So I don't know if anyone's able to answer that first one around the sort of the order in which you do things, so that you're keeping all of your tests current and valid.
I'm unsure if there is a restriction on timings. I think that might be something that I need to sort of go back and have another look at, because I don't know if there are any order restrictions. I will double check for that.
I think the only restriction on that I might be wrong, but I think the only restriction is if you are being sponsored by an employer, the employer would probably want you to do the DBE check as part of your employment requirements, which would have to be done before you could be employed in the organisation. and that's irrespective of whether you're going to be working as a registrant or not. If you're going to be working with patients, you would have to undertake that. But I don't think in terms of the registration, I think, Nikki, you're it'd be great if you could double check it, but I think you're right with what you say. But obviously, if you're sponsored by an employer and you're going to be working, they would require you to do that as part of your employment. Any more, Helen?
Yeah, there's one who's just popped in from a unknown person, so I can't give you a shout out, sorry. Is it possible to change from adult nurse to midwife if you have the training, and what is the procedure?
I've put some information there about trying to revalidate with both qualifications. It is possible to keep both your midwifery and your nursing qualification. If you wanted to go, say for instance, you'd registered as a registered nurse, if you then wanted to register as a midwife and only work as a midwife, you would have to then, as I talked about, make sure all those qualifications had been correctly registered with the NMC and they had confirmed that.
Just coming in on the back of what Jill has just said there, based on my recent experience, if you want to maintain dual qualifications as such, I think a lot of nurses find that some of the midwifery duties overlap with some of the nursing duties. The NMC are quite precise on whether you're working in a whole midwifery role and a whole nursing role. So it's, although at any one time you may be doing work that is related to both, you must build up your hours in a substantive role in either of the two disciplines and not cross.
Thank you everybody for joining us this evening, because I know it's a bit wet and windy out there and you've all got other things that I'm sure you want to be doing. I hope you found it useful. We are a very friendly bunch at the RCN and we'd love to hear from you, and we're really happy to help and to support you. So please do think about getting in touch. If you've got any questions that you haven't asked, pop them in the chat. And I hope that we get the opportunity to meet some of you at some of our other events in the future. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to everybody who has attended tonight. Take care. Bye.